All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Jen Wilson. I'm the Director of Programming and Advocacy with New England Museum Association. I'm joining you from home, actually, with my cat, who's right next to me. And I'm in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And we are joined by, or going to see our presentation by our three workshop facilitators today. So on site, we have Catherine Fecto, who is the Curator of Exhibitions at Old Sturbridge Village. Hi, Catherine. We also have Amy Haitala, who's it's a long one, project archivist and manager for the American Revolution Papers Digitization Project at Connecticut Museum of Culture and History. No way for Amy, but trust me, she is there. And then also our third presenter today is Dorothy Rivera, the manager of research and exhibits at the Mary Eddy Baker Library. So I'm going to hand it right over to our speakers today. I am going to put a spotlight on them so that way you should see both the presentation and them presenting in person. So our presenters are doing an in-person workshop, as you know, in addition to doing this presentation. So you should see now a split screen between the slide deck and then also them on site. If you want to balance out the presentation between the two, there's like a little sliding scale thing in between, so you can make them whatever's comfortable to you, so you can make them equidistant, so you get a sense of what they're presenting hands-on in person as well as the presentation they're talking about. All right, I will be on this end, so if anybody who's on the virtual webinar side has some questions, feel free to drop them in the chat for me. I can help you on the tech side, but otherwise I'm going to hand it over to Catherine, Amy, and Dorothy on site. All right, it's all yours.
Awesome, thank you. Let's get started. You can switch all your good buddy things.
Yeah,
so we have a quick welcome and agenda. This was Catherine's choice for what is book, why is book.
Context if anyone wants to ask later.
Exactly. Yes. So our basic agenda is best practices for displaying library and archives materials, exhibiting library and archives materials, and workarounds, because we know there are always going to be problems. So for anyone that can't see me, I am Amy Haitala. I am an archivist by trade, and I do no exhibits whatsoever at all. I have no creativity at all. So I am here on the side of the archives. What can we do to protect the archives? I am, like I was telling people earlier, I am the person that you come to and say, I would like to exhibit this, and I panic because I want to know what you're exhibiting, why you're exhibiting it, where you're exhibiting it, and how. So I'm coming from that side of it. So this NADCC 5 simple rules for display is really the most basic, but probably like if you are going to do the bare minimum, this is what you should be doing. Photocopies are fine, facsimiles are fine. I think Dorothy's going to discuss that as well. We have certain fears when you're displaying things. So the primary ones we are the most concerned with: light, air, surfaces, and safety. We can do a whole nother webinar if we want to do anything on pests, natural disasters, building maintenance, but we are not focusing on any of that here. We are just going to focus on light, air, surfaces, and safety, because those are the most basic. So the biggest thing is light. And I think this is like one of the biggest issues that everyone talks about. I've heard more people, I've done consulting in museums, and I've heard people say, oh, I have UV film, no problem. UV film lasts 15 to 20 years max. A lot of people put it in the 70s. So even if it looks still intact, if it's not torn, it is deteriorating and it will not do the job that it needs to do. LED lighting is great. It is lets off less heat. It's less damaging. However, it still damages. I think the biggest one we focus on is UV light. So everyone thinks, well, keep everything away from windows, but we also have to remember entry doors. If you have an exhibit near an entry door, if you have skylights, this is all going to be letting all of that UV light in. Another thing to keep in mind is sun shifts. So as the day goes on, one spot where you have a display might not be in the sun. but at 6 o'clock in the morning when the sun is rising, it might be in direct sun. Throughout the year, I have an office window, and throughout the year, it's wonderful. This time of year, I am beaten by the sun every afternoon. So being aware of your location, what is happening, and how all of the light is shifting. Damage is permanent, especially for photos. If you have this one lovely example from the OSV Wells family collection, it is faded. You are never, ever going to get that color back. If you scan it, if you display it on, can darken the images, that's great, but you will never actually get the original artifact back. One of the biggest thing is cumulative damage. Light damage is cumulative. So if you say, okay, I've looked at the resources, I can display this for 3 months, you've got to think about that's cumulative. So if you have it out for 3 months, but then the next year, I want to put it out another 3 months next year as well. That's now 6 months that it's been on display. There is a chart here on this. There is a link in our handouts, which will be mailed out to everyone, so you don't have to try to type out the links. That it's from Smithsonian, it's the Asian art, and it's a really great site. This is just an example. I'm gonna have to get close to look at it. Like if you have an inkjet printer or a color photocopy, it's 3 months over 5 years. 3 months to have something on display is nothing. Most people put things on display for 6 months to a year. Sometimes people are putting things on display permanently. So this is a huge thing. Paper is more durable. So if you have printed paper, manuscripts, if there is iron ball ink in it, that might help deteriorate the paper a little bit quicker. If you have books, those are going to be the most durable. Photographs are the biggest concern. So I did do this, and I'm going to see if this works. Aha. Nope. Yes, perfect. Okay, great. So this is a link called Graphics Atlas, and it's wonderful if you're displaying photographs. If you have old photographs, daguerreotypes, tintypes, don't know what you have, just know, oh, I've got an old image. This is a wonderful, wonderful site I use all the time. So there's an identification tab here, and you can hit search. And what this does is it allows you to go through and put in any information you have on the document. So if it's got a paper base, it's got like a brown tint to it, the search results will give you like all these different examples. And then you can break it down even more. You can do it, is it matte? Is it luster? Is it, whatever? And then you can click on some of the suggestions, and it gives you key features, examples, what it might be mistaken for, and then a whole description of these types of images. So to me, that is one of my favorite sites if you're doing anything with photography. Just know what you are displaying. So next thing is air quality. So we talk a lot about pollution. We talk about wildfires. We've had a lot of that in the last couple of years. If you don't have a good HVAC system, you're really going to be battling any of these pollutants that are in the air. Temperature, humidity. We want as stable a temperature as possible. Depending on what you're displaying, what type of materials you have, that's going to fluctuate. I would say it depends, it depends, it depends. High temps are bad. High and low humidity are bad. If you're displaying paper and have really low humidity, everyone's like, great, low humidity, no problem. That makes the paper really brittle. So you're going to want to try to keep everything as balanced as possible. And in these images, you can see that the photo on the top got really badly humidified. So it's curling up. The different layers of the photographs are going to be disintegrating differently. So that's where you're going to get the curls from. I've seen so many museums that have photographs on display, and they're all curled up like that. The photo on the bottom, you can tell there's a line to the left side where it's really dark and speckled, boxings happening. That was actually in a book. So what the clean, nice, beautiful part of the document has been blocked from sunlight, blocked from air, nice and safe. So you can really just start seeing the damage. Materials, best practices for materials. Gaylord Archival has this great Archival site, which is wonderful to look at. I will send the link for that as well. We're looking for acid, excuse me, and like lignin free. Those are the things that are just going to destroy your paper and destroy your photographs. So the way I've always explained this is with preservation of objects and storage, as well as displaying, is the item, whether it's Mylar, whether it's paper, whatever is closest to the object, make the best possible quality that you can afford or have access to. Let's say no white gloves, books, clean, dry hands. You do not need any gloves. Photographs, negatives, always use the gloves. We get more fingerprints on photographs that are really hard to get out and clean off. And then this little symbol here, the PAT, is the photo acidity test. So, excuse me, photo activity test, which is basically just going to see if you see it that it's passed the test, it's going to be safe for manuscripts and photographs. And then security and handling. So this is my lovely AI generated image. This is not an actual display case that has been shattered. But it is something to keep in mind that you really want to know where you're displaying your things. Are they accessible to people? Are they accessible to grabbing? Are they accessible to be destroyed? This example here, someone was going through and taking out signatures. So if it had a famous person's signature, they were tearing out the signature so that they had the signature. So yeah, lots of groans out here.
You're watching everyone's face just crumble.
So having cases, having things out of reach, behind glass, knowing your security system. Do you have cameras so people are a little bit more aware that there is security? Are there staff roaming around? Are there security roaming around? And just being able to really acknowledge, how things are being displayed and are they accessible to people that might not have good intentions. One of the other things I always like to talk about is most people have flat display cases, they're glass boxes. People love to put their food and drinks on them. They are not airtight. If someone's coffee spills, it will spill into the case. So having these things aware, do not touch signs, do not place objects on this as well. And I think that is all I had. I also want to mention having a list of what you do have on display, accession numbers, descriptions, when it was put out, and having just like a spreadsheet to describe all of the things that you are doing, so you are able to keep track of everything.
All right. Thank you so much, Amy. So moving from the how to, what sort of standards and things to consider when you're putting these items on display, to how you actually do that, the nuts and bolts. And some of this, I'm sure, many of you are familiar with. Maybe some of it will be new. That's the hope. But we're starting off with one of my favorites for a lot of reasons. The very, very tried and true. Put Plexi over it. This is a map. It's a very, very large map that we have on display next door. I've heard these referred to as a number of different things. I've heard them called vitrines, wall cases. I call them a bonnet. I don't know if anybody else does, or if that's just the kooky thing we say around here. But they're great for a lot of reasons. They're very, very protective, and we get the majority of ours from Smallcore, which is a company up in Greenfields, about an hour away from here, so they're local. They can make things custom to the size that you need. The downside, obviously, to these sorts of things is that they are pricey. They're very, very pricey, unfortunately, especially the larger you get. So while it is the trade-off that you can order plexiglass covers that are, that have UV filtering, that are scratch resistant, and all these sort of extra features to help protect what's on display and prolong the life of what you're using to display it. But the trade-off is, of course, the money for it. But this is one that's a great option. I don't have actually a picture of the table case that Amy had mentioned. That's similar. That's another great option. Although I will see your food and drink and raise you baby changing table.
Oh. I think that was all involuntary. Everyone was just like, oh God.
All right. So sorry, I'm going to sneak over here a second. So I've never actually used these myself, in full disclosure. Oh, good. Okay, there we go. I've never used these things myself in full disclosure, but I want to very, very much. This picture with the blue background I took at the Connecticut Museum of Culture and History. This is a Wide Awakes exhibit that they had it closed earlier this past year. But this is another sort of acrylic or plexiglass mount that I'm seeing nodding that some folks have used them. Great, you can teach me later. But another great way to very, very well protect by sandwiching whatever flat artifact it is that you have. It appears that they can work with both drywall and studs, question mark. If you're like me, I never really know what is behind my walls. So it's best to be prepared for any sort of eventuality when you're trying to put something up. But again, it took me a little while to figure out when I was searching for these online, what sort of keywords you have to put into your search to yield these. I came up with frameless, sandwich, standoff, and door frame for whatever reason were what Google yielded or gave me the result that I was looking for when I put those in. And I think these also come in a variety of different price points. My friend in Connecticut says they just get them off of Amazon, which is its own, potential, can be potential kettle of fish, but very accessible for a lot of people and price points. I'm going to, oh, thank you so much.
That was easier.
Well, we do a lot of here. One of the things that we rely on most here at the village is Mylar, which we'll play with in a little bit in many of its various forms. If you haven't worked with it in the past, it comes in various thicknesses. I think it's the three most common that I saw were like 3, 4, and 5 millimeter thickness. And you can use it for a variety of different things. This was a picture that I took at the Constitution Center many, many, many years ago. And it doesn't show up terribly well in the picture. But what you'll see is that they've used Mylar on the corners to hold things into place so that they can put it up on a wall. If I had to guess, I would say that it's probably a piece of archival mat board that's been covered with some sort of fabric to make it look prettier, more aesthetic, that then has the corners that are put in place to hold whatever flat thing you're putting on display up against this hard surface so that you can put it on a wall. Not sure how they put it on the wall, to be honest. We use command strips quite a bit around here, but this is some sort of fabric backer, so not entirely sure what they used in that case, but it gives you a place to start at least. Oh, that's not nice. That one. So both of these pictures are from here at the village. We do this quite a bit, making little kind of Mylar sandwiches for our various archival things. I believe one of my colleagues, and unfortunately I cannot remember which one, or I would give them the credit for it, went to a workshop a number of years back where they learned how to make sort of these custom Mylar sandwich surrounds using a soldering iron. So that instead of having to tape them into place, and of course, we all, I think, get a little bit of pause anytime we have to use tape that is in close proximity to, archives and manuscripts and whatnot, that you can, using a soldering iron, you can melt the two sheets of Mylar together so that it's a clean edge without any sort of tape or anything. And actually, we're going to do that a little bit later as well. Obviously, the artifact isn't in the Mylar while you're doing this. You stick it back in later. for the safety of everything involved. But it's a really easy thing to do. It takes a little bit of patience, but obviously in this case, you can see we've used it for banknotes that are paper. We've also used it for ribbons. The banknote, I can tell you, is attached to the wall with just the command strips, like I mentioned earlier, that are very cleverly hidden behind the banknote so you can't see the dirty secrets. But the ribbon, it's a mourning ribbon for Lafayette, is held up with just some very, very, very strong magnets, which are also very useful. You can paint them so that they sort of disappear into the background if you'd like, or you can just leave them kind of as they are if it's more of a temporary installation. So we use Mylar in a lot of different ways around here. Thank you. Everybody's favorite book cradles or acrylic easels, however you want to refer to them. And we have probably saw the assortment that I brought out when you walked in. We use these in a variety of different ways, a variety of different spaces across the village. They come in many different shapes and sizes. The little book that's on the far side is also held open, again, using Mylar strips of just, a thin linguine shaped piece of Mylar that you've taped together to help hold the book open wherever it is you need to. Obviously, you don't want to force it, but it is very, very helpful to have to help you keep this the book open without kind of intruding on the visual presence of whatever it is you're trying to present. Next one, please. Thank you. And then one other way that we've in the past displayed our library and archives materials, and I will say you do have to do this with your sturdier items, is that we use L hooks quite a bit. They come in a variety of different shapes and sizes. Again, you can paint them to sort of make them disappear into the background if need be. And again, for your very stable, sturdy materials, they can be used in a variety of different ways. You see, we have books here that are kind of like floating on the backboard. We have books that are being held open into a certain place with L hooks as well. I will say, important thing to remember when you're doing this is that if you're the back of the book is going to be up against any sort of surface, any sort of, in this case, painted surface, freshly painted surface, there's a layer of Mylar that is, again, behind the book, so nothing is touching. So all of these books are backed so that they're not directly touching the paint. Anytime there's an L hook in contact with the book, there's also Mylar there as well, to just sort of be a protective barrier against anything that is not the book or the artifact itself. Because again, protection and preservation are is what we do. I think I have one more. And this is not book and manuscript related, but I wanted to share this just because this is, I thought it was a really great application. If you ever go to, I'm sure if you are an exhibit person and go to a museum, or you go to a museum with exhibit people, we're taking pictures of how they put stuff on the walls, not necessarily what is on the walls itself. So this was something that was done at the Henry Sheldon Museum in Vermont. And I thought it was really clever because it was a very simple but elegant solution. So this is a wall that they made out of a couple of sheets of plywood, and that is also doing double duty and blocking a window, which is what's behind this wall. So it's creating wall space where you need it. And it's also, again, helping with these issues of UV that we're also trying to constantly think about. So yeah, it's a plywood back that's set into a plywood base that's been very, simply but elegantly cut. So I throw this in as another suggestion for when you need a wall in a pinch. And I'll turn it over to you, Dorothy.
Great. Hi guys, so my name is Dorothy Rivera. I'm the manager of research and exhibits at the Mary Baker Eddy Library, which is a little bit of a misnomer. We are neither a library nor are we a history museum. We're really an archive with grant admissions for exhibits. So that's most of what I do here. So what I'm going to talk about, because I have no degrees in library science or in archives. I have several degrees in history. So when Amy mentioned the person who comes to you and asks you to put this thing on display, hi, everybody, I'm the problem, it's me. So I have been doing exhibits and trying to find a way to do them in a way that effectively sort of tells the story about your collections, because that's what we're really here to do, right? We're not sort of like putting this 200-year-old book out for just kind of funsies. We're doing it because we're trying to tell a story, and we want to make sure that we're doing that in an effective way. And we're using originals because they give the exhibit authenticity. We want to make sure that, but we also want to make sure that it's still telling the story effectively. And so one of the things that I really try to do when I'm putting these things together is figure out if the original is actually the most effective way to do that, not just, are you going to destroy the original by putting it in the case? So we really want to think about sort of what the story is we're trying to tell, what the best way is to tell the story, and what's the alternative to using original materials. And in some cases, you can actually use reproductions and have them be a lot more effective. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Or as I like to call this section, I can't even book here. You see Ken carrying the books back to the stacks. Sometimes it doesn't work out. So you kind of have to roll with it. So kind of the first case study I have here is when, yes, the original materials are the best way to tell the story, but they've been out too long and the archivists are getting nervous. So what I have here, and you'll see the original sort of layout there, that is a scrapbook from World War I. It is from a gentleman named Walter S. Cross. Please pay attention to the photo in the corner. We're going to come back to that one later. So this was a fantastic exhibit. We had it sort of in gestation for a couple of years. It was designed to talk about Christian Scientists and military chaplaincy, beginning with the First World War and really going all the way up to the present. Now, the thing about this exhibit was I installed this exhibit in December of 2019. I was going to change it out sooner. Then I didn't get to go back to the office for a while. So I didn't get to do a lot of exhibit development. I didn't get to change a lot of things about this exhibit. So I had to kind of roll with the punches a little bit, which sometimes we have to do in our sort of spit and duct tape world of museum work. So this initially, one of the ways that you can sort of work with books like this is the thing that we were first of all concerned about was one, the light going onto these photos, and also the binding. So the nice thing with this scrapbook is it had several different pages that were really interesting. We've got a bunch of, they're really tiny little photos on that page. Apparently after liberating France, Chaplain Cross sort of went around the country taking all these pictures. They're adorable, they're teeny tiny. But he also had newspaper clippings. He also had notes in the book. So turning the pages was one way to kind of put less strain on the binding and also have less light exposure on any individual page. The other alternative you'll see in the middle there is he also had a bunch of sort of inserts in the scrapbook. So after the book had been up for about a year and you could see my archivist getting really, really nervous, I said, okay, we can take this off. And then we just sort of put the inserts out for a while. So he had some postcards, he had some newspapers. So it was still kind of telling the same story without putting additional damage on the original material. The other thing to keep in mind when you're doing stuff like this is you want to think about this when you're writing caption. So when I had sort of like at the bottom of the screen there in the middle, you can see kind of the caption that we had with it. You don't want to tie the caption too specifically to any particular part of the item you're using if you think you're going to have to change anything out about that. And another good example of that is actually on the previous slide. So the Bible that you see out here, and this is great. Catherine and Amy got to hear about this week. So that exhibit case is really fancy. That exhibit case has all sorts of temperature and humidity controls, and it has light sensors, and it is like the gold standard. It is dim until someone stands in front of it, and then the lights slowly come up, and you're really preserving the book, which is great if you understand that it's an exhibit case. If you don't understand it's an exhibit case, it's something that sits there blackly. And while I have the curiosity of a cat and will wander up and go, what the heck is this? Apparently not everyone has that natural instinct. So it was making our board of directors a little uncomfortable. So like, oh, people are missing this because they don't realize that it's an exhibit case. So as of Tuesday morning, I got a call saying that they wanted us to change the settings on the exhibit case so that the lights were on all the time in a room that already has pretty high light levels. So you know what I did? I closed the book. So you want to think of not only how does the book display when it's open, how does it display when it's closed? This is Asa Gilbert Eddy's Bible. It is a beautiful Bible. There are wonderful engravings throughout it, but bless its heart, its cover is also super pretty. So we just went and we opened the case and we closed the book, and the caption is written in such a way that it still works. So think about how you're using the exhibit, how you're using the object, how you're using the document, and what different ways there are to use it when you're writing caption, because that was something I could do with no thought, 2 seconds, and my problem was not solved, but alleviated for at least several months. It wouldn't have been the case if it was like, oh no, I have to research, write, fact check, copy, edit, print an entirely new caption. So give yourself some wiggle room when you're putting this stuff together. Sorry, Ken, we'll come back to you later. The other thing that you can do for displaying items is think about ways to do it digitally. So this exhibit was originally in our research room. People were sort of coming in for it, but this is also our first online exhibit. So when we took the exhibit down, we moved it online. And because we were putting the scrapbook out for display, we actually had a full preservation scan made of it. So we had NEDCC do it. So we have every page in the scrapbook scanned. And once the exhibit closed, we had a wonderful gentleman who does our user experience, and he actually put the whole scrapbook into a flash. I'm so sorry, Al's gonna kill me. A flash thingy, whatever it is. I'm happy to show you guys the exhibit later, but you can actually click on a picture of the scrapbook now in the exhibit. It will open it up and you can page through the entire scrapbook. It even makes this really cute page turny sound when you go to different pages. And it's really cool. And it's really expanded the reach of the exhibit. And if I were doing it on site, I could have the same thing up on an iPad. People would be able to flip through it. And you're getting so much more out of it than I would have had if it had been in an exhibit case and no one's able to touch it. So it's, even though it's not an original, it's that people are looking through, it can in a lot of ways be a better experience for the people who are seeing your exhibit. Like I can get more out of it and no one's touching the book. Like that. All right. So are original materials the best way to tell the story? Yes, but they're really ugly edition. So speaking of the fact that the Asa Gilbert Eddy Bible has a beautiful cover, unfortunately, one of the books, because of the preservation we've had to do on it in our collection that is not really aesthetically pleasing, is something called the Baker Family Bible. And you can see it closed in the case there, and you can't even really tell it's a Bible, unfortunately, because it's just this sort of blank leather skin, and you can't see it particularly well in the photo that we have up here, but if you sort of move a little closer, you can kind of see the string that had to go across to sort of hold the cover in place over the only inscription in the book that really has sort of content purposes. So that was a little upsetting. So what you can do in cases like that is you can utilize reproductions. So I have some like this, and I'm happy for people who are on site to pass these around. These are sort of high quality printed reproductions that we had done. This was for a different Bible in the collection.
Oh, one in front of the camera.
Yes, I can do that. It's not displaying very well. I'm so sorry. If anyone wants to see scans of these, I'm happy to email them to people. So what we did with that, and then we had them professionally framed as well, so that people are able to actually see the caption. And in the version of this that we put up, we actually digitally erased the string so that you could really see the inscription in the book. And we sort of put it in context, because again, you've got the original out there. People feel like they're seeing the real book. They feel that there's that sort of level of authenticity, but you can still keep the book safe and it's displaying better, because that's also the only page that has real inscription on it in the book. And it's right there in the front cover, pressing on that part of the binding. And again, I really like my archivist. I really like keeping her happy. So that's one workaround as well. So I will come back to that because there's a couple other things here. All right, are original materials the best way to tell the story? No, but because they aren't displaying very well. So that there is a photo of Chaplain Cross, and you can see in the tradition of the early 20th century, it's really, really dark. So I can tell you he's a chaplain. It's a little hard to tell from the photograph because it's so dark you can't see his uniform. So again, we've sort of lost a bit of the storytelling element. On top of it, you could sort of see, and I'm going to go back to the case here. You can see from sort of the original, we originally put the photo in the case. We put the photo in Mylar to protect it. And then you couldn't see the photo at all, because we don't have great control over the light in that room. So you had the glare going onto the case, which had its own glare, which had the glare, then the glare on the Mylar, then the glare on the original photo. So by the time you were sort of looking at the photo, you pretty much had like a giant spot of light that people were looking at. And we were talking about sort of not having people on your cases. In order to try to see the exhibit, then you've got people bending over the case, trying to get the right angle to get the glare out of it. So what we did instead was when we were having our staff design the caption, they actually just worked the photo into the caption. So they lightened the photo up a little bit so that you could actually see that this is in fact a man in military uniform. Again, I've got the original here and we just put it on board here. And because again, we've got sort of originals in the case, you've got sort of the authenticity from that, and people can actually get a decent look at the caption and the photo. So it's, again, you don't want to put the photo out for the sake of it. You want to make sure that people are actually able to get something out of the exhibit. All right. And this kind of brings me to a little bit of what we've been doing all along, sort of interspersing kind of reproductions with originals. So for this first one that you see on the top there, the bottom one's the Asa Gilbert Eddy Bible. The top one is a book called the Book of Psalms, and it is one of the Bibles in our collection that Mary Baker Eddy worked the most with. She's really like taking notes, particularly in the cover. She does this really cool thing where like she will say like the date that she turned to a particular passage in the Bible and sort of the inspiration that she drew from it. And it's really fantastic, and it goes really well with the context of our exhibit. She kept writing in pencil. So again, highlight area, pencil writing, really special book, don't want to hurt it. So again, we sort of intersperse sort of these copies with the originals. So we would have it out for a bit. We would sort of have, particularly the copies that I was passing around earlier, those are examples of the writing that she would do in the front covers of the book. And then for the actual book, we would open to the page that she's referring to. So it sort of all intellectually ties together, but we're not, again, putting too much pressure on the individual book. And the other issue is that for some of the stuff in our collection, I don't know about anyone else's, they want to work with silked documents in their collection. So someone in the early 20th century thought it would be, I could hear someone groaning. Someone thought it would be a really great idea to silk all of Mary Baker Eddy's correspondence, which means in a lot of cases you have one document backing onto the other and there's bleed through from the other side of the document. So it's actually obstructing the view. So that's what we did with, for example, this is her address on the 91st Psalm. And we had the same kind of reproduction I passed around earlier. We had it professionally framed. The frame matches the case that's down there. And we've eliminated the bleed through that you would otherwise have when you're looking at it. So we've made sure that people are actually really getting out of the exhibit what we want them to get out of it. So using the reproductions, I've kind of got them as like a cuckoo and a baby cuckoo in another bird's nest. Like you don't sort of think about the fact that that's not the original because we're just going to keep feeding it anyway and everything is fine. All right, the other thing that I've done for my cheat code is to see if there's other items that can tell the story. So again, I've got a reproduction in here. The only real original item that I have in here is actually book plates. I'm going to tell you why I love book plates. Because they're metal. I love metal book plates so much. I may not want to put out the original book. I may not want to put out the original letter, but gosh darn, I will leave those book plates out there until the cows come home. Those are fantastic. I love metal plates. And then the other book I have in there is not the original book, but it's rather a copy of it that someone else had that does the job just as well. So it's a very authentic case. The book comes from the time period, but it's not actually Mary Baker Eddy's. I've got some nice metal plates and I've got a reproduction, and everyone sort of feels like they're getting what they want to get out of that exhibit case. All right. Now, using professional reproductions, I promised you I'd tell you a couple of lovely stories about, here's the thing that happened to me that I don't want to happen to you. This is a case where I would absolutely go outside to use reproductions. And this is one we did with the New England Document Conservation Center, because I wouldn't put original newspaper on display. Anyway, I see the people who've had to work with newspaper, you take it out of the folder, the edges start sprinkling onto the floor. You've got to sweep everything up once you're done. And this is a proof copy of the Christian Science Monitor. This is the one that they sort of brought to Mary Baker Eddy, and she made, like, again, pencil notations on it, and I am not putting that thing on display, certainly not in this case. So we sent it to the New England Document Conservation Center. They made reproductions. High pandemic, my boss and I are down there putting these in the case with this guy who was making custom cases for this. And we go to install it. It didn't fit. And it didn't fit because NEDCC, in their wonderful customer service, wanted to make sure we had really authentic newspaper edges. So they put it on and they made it too big for the case. So that was 48 hours of me rushing back and forth between Andover and Boston, trying to make sure that I could get copies that fit in the case. So when you send out for your reproductions, make sure you not only tell them sort of what size the original should be, but what size the case is that they're going in. But this is a case that I'd absolutely use professional reproductions. I would use it for books as well, because we've got some great resources at the library. I can't make authentic newspapers off the top of my head. So that's one that I'd absolutely go outside for. Which then brings me to the making your own reproductions. This is a fun one. You'll see that the document on your right side here is an ancient historical text called a fax. Now, putting this in a history exhibit wasn't as hurtful as when they came out with historical American Girl dolls from the year 2000 that had Pizza Hut and Book It sets with and an inflatable chair. That was a hard day at the office for everyone when those came out, but it was pretty bad. Now, I wouldn't put an original fax in the case just because, again, it doesn't display very well. It's a little curly. Frankly, the original is pretty hard to read. So you know what I did with this? I photocopied it. I absolutely photocopied it because that's one that you're not looking for these authentic 19th century edges and the right kind of bleed through. It's a fax, kids. So I literally went to the photocopier. I did the same thing with this pamphlet. This one is from World War II. It's a Ministering to a Christian Scientist pamphlet. And I wouldn't put the original out, both for preservation purposes, and I only had one copy of it. And it's, you can see, a two-sided document. So I literally just went to the photocopier, tweaked with it a little bit, put it in the case, displayed it, on some nice little boards and everything. No one could tell it wasn't the original. And then you could actually see the whole thing. And that lent itself much better to the storytelling than if I had just thrown the original in just for funsies. So always, we're all very good, I think, at this point in sort of working with what we've got. Work with what you've got is sort of my other tip for that. But I think that's everything. So, Catherine, you want to talk a little about what we're doing now?
Sure. Well, first I should say, Jen, are there any questions that have come up on the Zoom?
We have not had any questions come up, but if anybody has them, they can feel free to drop them in.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions either here in the room or here on Zoom, we can take those now. Yes. Yes. So the question was, what sort of purpose does Mylar serve? And I would say it's primarily protective. Do either of you want to speak to Mylar, and just Amy in particular? Amy loves Mylar.
Mylar is very versatile. So
Amy, closer to the computer just in case.
Okay. So if you have like a wooden table, that's your only option to display on. You can put a little piece of Mylar on so that the object is not touching the wood. Mylar is great, like with the sleeves that Catherine showed, for protection. We store things in Mylar. Caveat with that is if it is a moldy item, do not put moldy things into Mylar, because then it creates this little microclimate and the mold will just eat everything that's in there. Mylar is great to protect because bugs, mice aren't going to want to chew through plastic to try to get to the papers, which is also wonderful. I do not do 4-sided seals for Mylar. Usually 2 sides is great. 3 sides if you're displaying and want it like hanging on a wall. There are multiple different types of Mylar. I will have Jen include a link to Gaylord, the Y Archival panel. They also have one on Know Your Plastics, so you know which type of Mylar is the best. Mylar is kind of like our generic, it's like a polyester type. There are different thicknesses, so if you want something that's going to be a little bit more sturdy, you can do a bigger thickness. There's some that are really thin, which are great for when you're doing the little fettuccine strips to hold books open. But yeah, there's so many options that you can do for Mylar. It's not going to keep a UV out. Definitely not. Oh, yes. Yes, I can do that. That one's all the way at the beginning. Sorry to flip and bug everyone's eyes out.
And can, for the people on the webinar, can you repeat the question?
Sure. The question was just asking to go back to the 5 simple rules for display.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay. I was just going to say that I like this one because it kind of covers like the basics. So doing copies if you can, never ever put stuff out on display permanently. If you do make a copy, keep light as low as possible. If you're displaying books, paper, photographs, you need light to see them. That's the downfall. So you're going to want it bright so people can actually read the documents. But having a case similar to what Dorothy talked about, where it turns off when people aren't there. Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, I was trying to find an image and I couldn't find it. But if you've ever been there, they have these beautiful cases that are like velvet covered, and then you just pick the velvet up and then you can see the objects and then put the cover back down on it. You also need to make a note to tell people that that is okay to do, but that's a great one. And then ensuring that the cases and frames are enclosed, sealed, made of materials that will not damage the contents. One of the things I skipped over in my notes was because you're doing exhibits, you are painting cases. You are might be using glues. You might be using different materials that are really bad and off gas and will destroy paper. So if you can, I know anyone that does exhibits, that is a fast turnaround, but waiting until the paint is dry, airing out the room, having an air purifier, something in there to try to protect it, because if you have a painted surface, then you put your artifacts in there and then you put that beautiful, wonderful plastic vitrine over that will protect it. It's just going to all condense in there, which we really don't want to do.
I see there is a question on Zoom. Do you have any recommendations for displaying paper objects in a drawer case? How to keep them from sliding around?
And the hamsters are running.
On the wheel in my brain. So I have a series of questions about this drawer. I guess it depends. Does the drawer have any sort of covering to it? Like, if there's some, we have drawers here at the museum that have like a plexiglass cover to them so that, you can't just reach your mitts in and do whatever it is that you might want to do in that drawer. So if it has a covering to it, I mean, again, my first thought would be to plexi cover over the top, fabric inside. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So I think two thoughts. One is clunky, one is a little bit more almost elegant. My first thought would be, again, if you put it in a sleeve of Mylar, you can then attach it to the fabric underneath with either like some sort of adhesive square or some tape or something, and the document itself would cover that. But that's with the plexi cover and the Mylar sleeve that creates the issue of, is anybody going to be able to see this thing ever? The other thing that comes to mind would be putting the paper on some sort of either mat board or archival backing material with little, again, the plexi or the Mylar corners, so that it's not obscuring the whole thing. And probably I would think the tackiness of the board against the friction of the fabric would probably keep that in place, and you'd have Mylar holding the document stable without covering the whole thing. It's not the most elegant solution, I think, but that's what comes to my mind first. Does anybody else have any other thoughts? Have anybody tried to do battle with drawers? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So on Zoom, it was saying that the document gets its own, it is fully matted. And when you say that, it's like the when you're talking about like a matting like in a frame. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like matted like it's in a frame, um, and fitted to the drawer so that the mat is the size um of the drawer.
I will go back with that and show one of the other images. If you see the picture there, it was a acidic mat. It was not an archival mat on it.
No. They sell no. There are archival mats.
There are archival mats, or even if you're using like a mat board to make a frame on it, but make sure that whatever is touching the image to make sure it's safe.
No, you can buy the good stuff.
Oh yeah,
yes, absolutely. There's a question on Zoom that says, "Can you say the name of the company that made the custom bonnet?" So that was Small Core. So small CORP. And I have their website linked on the handout as well. Worked with them. They're lovely. They send me a Christmas card every year, which is very, very sweet. So yes, they're fantastic. And will work with you. You can either call them specifically with, this is what I want, this is what I need, or this is what I need to put on display. What do you recommend? And they have the expertise to do both of those things. Oh, and Jen has dropped it in the chat as well. Thank you very much, Jen. Any other questions that anybody has? Yes. So the question was, do they sell acrylic book stands as well? I don't believe, I would have to double check. But what I will say is that I also, on this handout sheet, I've linked a bunch of places to get those as well. You can, I think there's some that you can get through stores like Michael's. Granted, some of those are a little bit more niche for like jewelry and whatnot, but depending on your purpose. But yes, you can also get them through various display places online. But yes, that handout has a bunch of resources for those as well. Yeah, because it's a variety of different shapes and sizes, and yeah, very, very versatile. So those are great.
I would say with display things as well, like I keep saying, whatever you can afford is the best bet, because something is better than nothing. And we all are coming from different institutions that with different financials. I don't think many people are able to have the wonderful case where you walk up to it and the light turns on.
To be fair, it's been an adventure. I think we had great ambitions for that case, and sometimes you can overdo it.
The grass is
fair enough.
The grass is not always greener in the other case.
Right. So for example, at one point the light would turn on a lot more than it should have because of, again, the time of year. The sun was at a certain angle. I think the sun was coming in, reflecting off the floor, going off one of the acrylic walls, and making people think that they're making the case think that someone was standing in front of it when it wasn't. So it's sort of, it was, I made a joke about it being a haunted case. I've been asked not to do that. So it was one of those things that originally the ask for the exhibit was, let's put out 12 original Bibles. I can't even describe the look on it. It was a previous archivist, but she was just like, no. And I was like, I don't think we can say that. We need a different solution. And so we thought, oh, this will be our solution. And honestly, we didn't think we'd even end up getting it. We thought they would be like, no, that's not practical, or that's too expensive. You can put out reproductions. And they were like, no, let's get the really fancy case. And my boss and I have spent the last 5 years finding different ways for the really fancy case to work. And as I said, in the end, now they're like, let's just turn the case on all the time. So
flips table.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I always stress, just whatever you're capable of doing, whatever you're able to do, something is better than nothing.
And so in a minute, or after a little bit, the folks that are physically present in here, will switch to doing a hands-on activity for if you, when you're doing what your budgets will dictate, so you can make some of your own kind of cradles and stands and mylar sleeves and whatnot. And we are going to share the handouts and the instructions and whatnot with the folks who are on Zoom as well. You'll also be receiving a sort of resources and materials kind of shopping list that will be distributed to everybody as well. And I assume we could probably also share the presentation itself with folks if folks would find that necessary, or not necessarily, if useful, we could certainly do that as well. Great.
Well, and of course, feel free to reach out.
Yes, yes. Our contact information is at the tail end. So thank you so much. Sorry, we're going to make you dizzy again.
Sorry.
There we go. Okay, so there's our contact information. So thank you thank you so very much to the folks who are physically here with us. Thank you so very much to the folks who have joined us on Zoom. If you have any other questions that come up, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. If we don't have the answer, we know a lot of people, so we can find it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you, Amy. This was great. And as I said, all of the resources will be made available, as will the recording of this. Thanks for everybody on the virtual end who is experimenting with something new on the NEMA side of doing an in-person and virtual webinar simultaneously. And then, as always, I have to do it. We are within about 32 days, I think, of conference. Early bird registration closes tomorrow. So if you are interested in attending this year's conference and you want to save some money, please register by the end of the day. So 11:59 p.m. And we look forward to seeing you in Manchester. For the folks who are at Old Sturbridge Village, have fun, have a great afternoon. And yeah, thanks everybody. Enjoy this beautiful day. Take care.